The massive alien space station floated in the void between stars, its crystalline spires catching starlight and reflecting it in impossible patterns. For 300 years, it had served as the galaxy's most important diplomatic hub, where thousands of species gathered to trade, negotiate, and maintain the fragile peace that held civilization together. Captain Sarah Chun pressed her face against the viewport of her small transport ship, watching the station grow larger as they approached. Even after visiting dozens of times, the sight still took her breath away. The Nexus station was built by the architects, an ancient race that had vanished millennia ago, leaving behind only their incredible technology and strict rules about who could use it. First time seeing the Nexus? Asked Commander Torres, the ship's pilot, noticing Sarah's expression. No, but it never gets old, Sarah replied. Still can't believe humans are the only species allowed to enter without going through authorization protocols. Torres chuckled. Lucky us, right? While every other species has to wait weeks or months for approval, submit genetic samples, undergo psychological evaluations, and prove their peaceful intentions, we just fly up and dock. Sarah nodded, but something had always bothered her about this arrangement. When humanity first encountered alien civilizations 50 years ago, they were shocked to learn about their special status. The Nexus station's ancient AI systems recognized humans immediately and granted them unrestricted access. No other species in the galaxy enjoyed this privilege. The Keth, with their 4 arms and chitinous shells, had to prove their worthiness through complex mathematical proofs. The elegant Valish required deep meditation sessions that could last months. The massive Gornak had to demonstrate their commitment to peace by undergoing painful neural modifications that suppressed their natural aggression. Even the wise Zephyrians, who had mastered time manipulation, needed special permits that took years to process. But humans? Humans just showed up. Nexus Control. This is Transport Vessel Mercury requesting docking clearance. Torres spoke into his communications array. The response came immediately in the melodic, artificial voice that all species had come to know. Transport Vessel Mercury. You are cleared for immediate docking at Base 7. Welcome back, humans. Sarah watched through the viewport as the massive docking bay doors slid open, revealing a cavernous space filled with ships from across the galaxy. The Keth vessels looked like floating metal insects, all angular curves and multiple appendages. Valish ships resembled flowing liquid metal, constantly shifting and changing shape. The enormous Gornak battlecruisers squatted like sleeping giants, their hulls scarred from countless battles. And then there were the human ships, looking almost primitive by comparison. Simple metal constructs with basic propulsion systems, no elegant curves or advanced metamorphic hulls. Yet they docked alongside the most advanced vessels in the galaxy as equals. As their ships settled into the docking clamps, Sarah gathered her diplomatic pouch and headed for the airlock. She was here on routine business, delivering updated trade agreements between Earth and the Centauri colonies. It should have been a simple job, but lately, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The station's interior was even more impressive than its exterior. Vast corridors stretched in all directions, their walls covered in the architect's mysterious symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Gravity fields allowed beings to walk on any surface, creating a 3-dimensional maze where up and down were matters of perspective. Sarah made her way to the central hub, a massive spherical chamber where representatives from hundreds of species conducted their business. The air was filled with a dozen different atmospheric mixtures, each species breathing what they needed while sophisticated force fields kept the gases separated. At the center of the chamber floated Ambassador Crix of the Galactic Council, his elongated form rotating slowly as he addressed the assembled crowd. The Zephyrian's voice echoed with harmonic overtones that could convey meaning across multiple time streams simultaneously. My fellow beings, Crix intoned, we gather today to address growing concerns about the balance of power in our galaxy. Recent conflict between the Outer Rim territories and the core worlds threatened to destabilize the peace we have worked so hard to maintain. Sarah found her assigned section and settled in to listen. These council sessions were always informative, giving her insights into galactic politics that helped Earth navigate its relationships with other species. But today she noticed something different in the way other delegates looked at her. The Keth representative, Ambassador Zek, kept glancing in her direction with what she had learned to recognize as suspicion among his kind. His four arms moved in subtle patterns that, according to Keth body language, indicated deep distrust. The Valish delegate seemed to shimmer with colors that suggested unease, while the massive Gornak ambassador's scarred face displayed what could only be described as barely contained frustration. "The humans grow too powerful," whispered a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see two Trilaxian traders, their insectoid forms hunched together in conversation. Their unrestricted access to the Nexus gives them unfair advantages. They learn our secrets, our weaknesses, while we know nothing of theirs. It is against the ancient laws to restrict their access, the other Trilaxian replied. The Architect's commands cannot be questioned. Perhaps, said the first, but laws can be reinterpreted. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard whispers like this before, but they were growing louder and more frequent. Many species were beginning to question why humans alone enjoyed such privileges, and some were starting to organize opposition to their special status. After the council session ended, Sarah made her way to her usual contact point in the station's commercial district. The Nexus wasn't just a diplomatic hub. It was also the galaxy's largest trading post. Beings from across known space came here to exchange goods, services, and information. She found Dr. Yuki Tanaka in his small research station, surrounded by alien artifacts and scanning equipment. The xenoarchaeologist was one of Earth's leading experts on architect technology, and he had been studying the Nexus station for over 20 years. "Sarah," he greeted her warmly. "Perfect timing. I've been making some fascinating discoveries about the station's deeper levels." "Actually, Yuki, I wanted to ask you about something else," Sarah said, settling into a chair designed for human physiology. "Have you noticed the other species becoming more hostile toward our special access privileges?" Dr. Tanaka's expression grew serious. "Yes, and it's getting worse. Just last week, the Keth delegation formally requested that the Galactic Council investigate the basis for our unrestricted access. They want to know why the architects gave us special treatment. And what did the Council decide? They can't override the station's AI systems, but they're putting pressure on Earth to voluntarily submit to the same authorization protocols as everyone else." Sarah frowned. "That would be a disaster. Our entire diplomatic and trade network depends on our ability to move freely through the Nexus. If we had to wait months for authorization like the other species, Earth would be cut off from galactic civilization." "I know," Dr. Tanaka said quietly. "That's why I've been working overtime to understand the architect's original programming. There has to be a reason they gave us this privilege, and I think I'm close to finding it." He gestured to his workstation, where complex holographic displays showed deep scans of the station's core systems. The Nexus AI isn't just a simple computer program. It's incredibly sophisticated, almost like a living consciousness. And deep in its memory banks, there are references to something called the Final Protocol. "What's that?" "I'm not sure yet, but every time I try to access those files, the system blocks me. It says I need prime authorization to view that information." Sarah studied the displays, noting the architect's symbols that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "Have you tried asking the AI directly?" "Of course, but it just gives me the standard response about following architect directives. The problem is the architects have been gone for thousands of years. Whatever they programmed into this station, we're living with the consequences." A soft chime echoed through the research station, indicating an incoming priority message. Dr. Tanaka activated the communication system, and the three-dimensional image of Admiral Hayes appeared before them. "Dr. Tanaka, Captain Chun," the Admiral's voice was tense. "We have a situation developing. The Keth Empire has announced they're sending a battle fleet to the Nexus station." Sarah's blood ran cold. "A battle fleet? But that violates the Nexus Accords." No military vessels are allowed within 3 light years of the station. They're claiming it's a diplomatic escort, Admiral Hayes continued. But our intelligence suggests they're planning to force the issue about human access privileges. If they can't get the AI to change its programming diplomatically, they might try to take control of the station by force. Dr. Tanaka shook his head. That's incredibly dangerous. The station has defensive systems that make it essentially impregnable. The architects built it to protect itself against any threat. Maybe that's what the Keth are counting on, Sarah realized. If they attack the station and the defenses activate, they could claim that humans are using architect technology to maintain an unfair advantage. It would turn the entire galaxy against us. The Admiral nodded grimly. That's our assessment as well. We're sending reinforcements, but they won't arrive for several days. In the meantime, you two need to find out everything you can about why the architects gave us special access. If we can prove there's a legitimate reason, we might be able to defuse this situation before it becomes a galaxy-wide war. The communication ended, leaving Sarah and Dr. Tanaka staring at each other in the sudden silence. Outside the research station's viewport, the normal bustle of the Nexus continued as beings from hundreds of worlds went about their business, unaware that their peaceful sanctuary was about to become the center of an interstellar crisis. We need to get to the core levels, Dr. Tanaka said finally. If the answers are anywhere, they're in the deepest parts of the station where the original architect programming is stored. Sarah nodded. How do we get there? Those areas are restricted even to humans. Actually, they're not, Dr. Tanaka said with a slight smile. Remember, we have unrestricted access to the entire station. It's just that no human has ever tried to go to the core levels because we assumed they were off limits. They gathered their equipment and headed deeper into the station, taking transport pods to levels that few beings had ever seen. As they descended, the architecture became more alien, with walls that seemed to bend reality itself, and corridors that led in directions that shouldn't have existed. The air grew thick with an energy that made Sarah's skin tingle, and she could hear a low humming sound that seemed to come from the station itself. When they finally reached the core level, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. At the center of the chamber stood a single console, its surface covered with architect symbols that seemed to flow like living water. As they approached, the symbols began to glow brighter, and the station's AI spoke with a voice that carried subtle harmonics Sarah had never heard before. "Welcome, humans. I have been waiting for you to come." Dr. Tanaka exchanged glances with Sarah. "Waiting for us? How did you know we would come here?" "Because the time of the final protocol approaches," the AI replied. "The galaxy faces a crisis that only humans can resolve, just as the architect predicted when they built this station millennia ago." Sarah stepped forward, her heart racing. "What is the final protocol? Why did the architects give us special access?" The crystalline structures around them began to pulse in complex patterns, and suddenly, the chamber was filled with holographic displays showing images from across the galaxy. Sarah saw planets under attack, space battles raging between massive fleets, and, worst of all, a darkness spreading between the stars that seemed to devour everything in its path. The architects foresaw this, the AI continued. A threat from beyond our galaxy, a force that seeks to consume all life and energy. They calculated that only one species would possess the unique qualities necessary to stand against this darkness. The displays shifted, showing detailed analyses of human psychology, physiology, and social structures. Sarah was amazed to see how thoroughly the architects had studied her species, even before first contact with alien civilizations. Humans alone possess the perfect combination of adaptability, creativity, and what you call stubbornness that will be needed in the coming war, the AI explained. Other species are too specialized, too rigid in their thinking. The Keth rely on mathematics and logic. The Valish trust in meditation and spiritual insight. The Gornak believe only in strength and honor. The Zephyrians manipulate time, but struggle with the present moment. But humans, the AI continued, humans are different. You adapt to any situation, think outside conventional patterns, and refuse to give up even when facing impossible odds. These qualities made you worthy of unrestricted access to the Nexus because you will need this station as your command center when the invasion begins. Dr. Tanaka was studying the displays intently. When will this invasion happen? Soon, the AI replied. My sensors detect gravitational anomalies at the galactic edge. The enemy approaches, and when they arrive, the galaxy's survival will depend on humanity's ability to unite all species against a common threat. Sarah felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. But the other species don't trust us. They see our special privileges as unfair advantages. How can we unite them when they're preparing to go to war against us? The AI's response was interrupted by alarms echoing throughout the chamber. Emergency lights began flashing, and the station's defensive systems activated for the first time in centuries. The Keth fleet has arrived, the AI announced. They're demanding entry to the core levels, claiming the right to investigate human privileges. Should I grant them access? Sarah and Dr. Tanaka looked at each other, knowing that their decision in the next few moments would determine the fate of the galaxy. Above them, the Nexus station prepared for its first battle in 300 years, while somewhere beyond the stars, an ancient enemy continued its inexorable approach toward their unsuspecting civilization. The Keth battle fleet emerged from hyperspace with a thunderous roar that shook the fabric of reality around the Nexus station. Admiral Zetka commanded the formation from his flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Behind him, 24 heavy cruisers and 50 destroyers took up attack positions, their targeting systems locked onto the ancient station. Nexus Station, Admiral Zetka transmitted on all frequencies, his 4 arms working the communication controls with precise movements. By order of the Keth Empire and the Galactic Council Emergency Committee, we demand immediate access to your core levels. Human privileges must be investigated and terminated. In the core chamber, Sarah watched the tactical displays with growing alarm. The Keth fleet was massive, easily capable of overwhelming any normal defensive force. But the Nexus station was far from normal. AI, what are our defensive capabilities? She asked. The artificial intelligence's response carried a note of ancient power. The architects built this station to withstand any conceivable attack. My defensive systems include quantum disruptors, reality anchors, and temporal stabilizers. However, activating them would be considered an act of war by the assembled species. Dr. Tanaka was frantically working at the console, trying to access more information about the final protocol. There has to be another way. If we can prove to the Keth that humans need special access for a good reason, maybe we can avoid a battle. Admiral Zetka is not known for listening to reason, Sarah said grimly. She had dealt with the Keth military commander before, during border disputes. He was brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely convinced of his species' superiority. He sees this as an opportunity to humble humanity and elevate the Keth Empire's position in galactic politics. The station's communications system crackled to life again. Nexus AI, you have 60 seconds to grant our fleet docking access, or we will assume hostile intent and respond accordingly. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. AI, patch me through to Admiral Zetka. Full diplomatic protocols. Captain Shun. The Admiral's image appeared in the chamber, his chitinous face displaying what Sarah recognized as contempt. I should have known humans would hide in the station's depths when confronted with superior force. Admiral, I'm not hiding. I'm trying to prevent a catastrophe that will affect the entire galaxy. Sarah kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. What you're doing violates the Nexus Accords. This station is neutral territory. The Accords were written when we believe the architect's AI was impartial, Zetka replied. Now we know it favors your species above all others. Such bias cannot be tolerated. The AI isn't biased, Sarah insisted. It's following programming that's thousands of years old. The architects had a reason for giving humans special access. And if you'll listen, I can explain. Zetka's mandibles clicked in what Sarah knew was the Keth equivalent of laughter. More human lies and manipulation. We are done listening. You have 30 seconds. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at tactical displays that showed the Keth fleet powering up their weapons. Energy readings spiked as the massive ships prepared to fire. AI, can you show the Keth the same information you showed us about the coming invasion? I can try, the AI responded, but the final protocol data is classified at the highest levels. Only humans have the authorization to access it. Then, give me full administrative access, Sarah said. Transfer authorization to the Keth so they can see the truth. Dr. Tanaka looked up from his console in alarm. Sarah, we don't know what that could do. The authorization protocols might be connected to other systems. You could be giving them access to critical defense networks. Before Sarah could respond, the first Keth bombardment struck the station. Energy beams capable of melting asteroids slammed into the Nexus's shields, creating brilliant flares of light that could be seen across the star system. The ancient barriers held, but Sarah could feel the station shuddering under the assault. Defensive systems activating, the AI announced, responding with minimum necessary force. The Nexus station's weapons were unlike anything in the galaxy's current arsenal. Streams of coherent energy erupted from hidden ports along the station's hull, each beam precisely calibrated to disable rather than destroy. The shot struck the Keth ships with surgical precision, overloading their shields and weapon systems without causing casualties. But Admiral Zetka interpreted the defensive response as confirmation of his worst fears. The station protects the humans, he broadcast on open channels. This proves they control ancient architect technology for their own benefit. Across the galaxy, other species monitoring the situation began to mobilize their own fleets. The Valish Confederacy dispatched their reality-shaping dreadnoughts. The Gornak Brotherhood sent their planet killers. Even the peaceful Trilaxians began preparing their merchant vessels for war. In the core chamber, Sarah watched in horror as her actions triggered the very conflict she had hoped to prevent. The AI's displays showed dozens of fleets converging on the Nexus station, all convinced that humanity was using architect technology to maintain galactic dominance. This is exactly what the enemy wants, Dr. Tanaka said, finally accessing deeper layers of the final protocol files. Look at this data. The chamber filled with new holographic displays showing detailed intelligence about the approaching invasion force. The images were terrifying beyond imagination. Massive ships that seemed to be made of living darkness, weapons that could extinguish stars, and, worst of all, a malevolent intelligence that had already consumed entire galaxies beyond their own. The Devourers, the AI explained. They feed on conflict, growing stronger as civilizations turn against each other. The architects detected their approach millennia ago and calculated that this galaxy's only hope would be perfect unity among all species. Sarah studied the tactical projections with growing understanding. But unity is impossible if everyone is fighting over resources and political power. That's why you needed humans to have special access to the Nexus. We're supposed to be the neutral mediators, the ones who can bring everyone together. Correct, the AI confirmed. Human psychology includes a unique capacity for seeing beyond tribal boundaries. Other species can cooperate, but they always prioritize their own kind first. Humans alone can truly embrace the concept of galactic citizenship. The station shuddered again as more ships arrived and joined the bombardment. The Valish vessels were using reality distortion weapons that created pockets of altered space-time around the Nexus. The Gornak ships fired kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Even a normally peaceful species were contributing to the assault. AI, how long can the station's defenses hold against this kind of coordinated attack? Indefinitely, came the reply. However, the energy expenditure required is interfering with my ability to monitor galactic perimeter defenses. If this continues, I will not be able to detect the Devourer's arrival until they are already within the galaxy. Dr. Tanaka was frantically working to decode more of the final protocol. Sarah, I think I found something. There's a command sequence here that's labeled Emergency Revelation Protocol. It looks like the architects programmed a way to force all species to understand the truth about the coming invasion. What does it do? I'm not sure, but the energy requirements are enormous. It would require shutting down all defensive systems and using the station's entire power output for a synchronized broadcast across the galaxy. Sarah looked at the tactical displays showing hundreds of ships now surrounding the Nexus station. More arrived every minute as word spread of the battle. The combined firepower aimed at them could probably destroy a moon, but the AI was right that the station's architect-built defenses could handle it indefinitely. But indefinitely might not be long enough. How close are the Devourers? She asked. The AI's response chilled her to the bone. My long-range sensors detected gravitational anomalies 6 hours ago. Based on current readings, I estimate they will reach the galactic perimeter in 72 hours. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible decisions. If she authorized the Emergency Revelation Protocol, it would leave the station defenseless during the broadcast. The attacking fleets might destroy the Nexus and everyone on it, including the AI that was apparently their only hope against the Devourers. But if she didn't, the galaxy species would continue fighting each other until the real enemy arrived to finish them all off. Dr. Tanaka, can you access the specific details of the Revelation Protocol? I need to know exactly what it will show the other species. Working on it, he replied, his fingers dancing over the architect interface. The symbols seemed to respond to human touch in ways they didn't for other species, another sign of the ancient race's careful planning. The chamber's displays suddenly shifted to show the command bridge of Admiral Zekka's flagship. The Keth commander was addressing his fleet with typical military precision. All vessels, concentrate fire on the station's central hub. Intelligence suggests that destroying the core will disable their defensive systems. Sarah watched in fascination as the Keth ships repositioned themselves for a focused assault. Admiral Zekka was brilliant, she had to admit. If the station weren't protected by technology that defied current understanding of physics, his strategy would be perfect. But the concentrated bombardment that followed achieved nothing except creating spectacular light shows as the energy was harmlessly absorbed by the Nexus's shields. This is General Voss of the Gornak Brotherhood. A new voice cut through the communication chaos. The massive, scarred face of the Gornak commander appeared on screen. Admiral Zekka, your weapons are ineffective. Our planet crackers will break this ancient fortress. Belay that order. Sarah transmitted on open channels. General, if you fire planet killers at the Nexus station, you'll destroy every ship in the vicinity, including your own fleet. General Voss's laugh was like grinding stone. Then, the station will know we are serious about ending human privileges. Stand down, or we all die together. Sarah realized that the situation had escalated beyond any hope of rational negotiation. The various species were so convinced of human treachery that they were willing to commit suicide rather than back down. Dr. Tanaka, whatever you're going to find it fast. Got it, he exclaimed. Sarah, the Emergency Revelation Protocol doesn't just broadcast information. It creates a temporary telepathic link between all sentient minds in the galaxy. Every being will experience the same visions, memories, and emotional understanding of the Devourer threat. And the downside? The psychic backlash could permanently damage the minds of species that aren't prepared for it. The architects included warnings about possible madness, death, or worse for beings whose mental structures can't handle the connection. Sarah stared at the displays, showing more ships arriving by the minute. Soon there would be representatives of every major species in the galaxy, all united in their determination to humble humanity and destroy what they saw as an unfair advantage. But there was something else in their unity that gave her hope. Despite their different biologies, cultures, and philosophies, all these species had come together for what they believed was right. They were capable of cooperation on a massive scale when they had sufficient motivation. The problem was that their current motivation was based on misunderstanding and fear. AI, she said finally, begin preparation for the emergency revelation protocol. Transfer all defensive power to the communication arrays. Sarah, no. Dr. Tanaka grabbed her arm. You don't understand what this could do. The psychic link might be permanent. It could fundamentally alter the consciousness of every being in the galaxy. Maybe that's what the architects intended, she replied. Maybe they knew that stopping the Devourers would require more than just military cooperation. Maybe it would require true understanding between species. The station's defensive barriers began to flicker as power was redirected to the massive communication arrays built into the Nexus's deepest levels. Admiral Zetka noticed the change immediately. Their defenses are failing, he broadcast triumphantly. All ships, prepare for final bombardment. But before any of the assembled fleets could fire, reality itself seemed to shift around the Nexus station. The ancient communication arrays activated with power levels that dwarfed entire star systems, sending waves of psychic energy racing across the galaxy at speeds faster than light. On thousands of worlds, in millions of ships, every sentient being suddenly found their consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of their individual minds. For one brief, overwhelming moment, the galaxy became a single connected entity, sharing memories, fears, hopes, and dreams across species lines that had never been crossed before. And in that moment of perfect unity, every being in the galaxy saw the truth about what was coming for them all. The psychic wave swept across the galaxy like a tsunami of consciousness, touching every sentient mind simultaneously. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zetka suddenly found himself experiencing memories that weren't his own. He felt the cold logic of Zephyrian time sight, the flowing emotions of Valish empathy, the burning honor codes of the Gornak, and beneath it all, something uniquely human that he had never understood before. Through Sarah Chin's memories, he experienced her genuine concern for all galactic species, her willingness to risk everything not for human advantage, but for universal survival. The Admiral's four hands trembled as he realized how wrong he had been about human motivations. But the personal revelations were nothing compared to what came next. The Nexus AI channeled the Architect's final message through the psychic link, and suddenly, every being in the galaxy shared the same terrifying vision. They saw the Devourers as the Architects had first encountered them millions of years ago, a force of absolute destruction that moved between galaxies like a plague of living darkness. The images were beyond horrific. Entire star systems consumed in moments, their energy feeding creatures that existed partially outside normal reality. Civilizations that had lasted millions of years simply erased, as if they had never existed. The Devourers didn't just destroy, they unmade things, removing them from the fabric of reality itself. Through the link, Admiral Zetka experienced the Architects' desperate calculations as they realized their own galaxy was doomed. The ancient race had achieved technological godhood, but even they were no match for entities that could devour energy, matter, and time itself. Their only hope was to prepare the species that would inherit the galaxy for a threat beyond imagination. The psychic connection showed him the Architect's vast project spanning millions of years. They had seeded younger races with specific genetic and cultural traits, guided their evolution through subtle interventions, and built the Nexus Station as the focal point for an elaborate plan to create unity where division had always reigned supreme. And at the center of that plan were humans. The Admiral experienced Sarah's emotions directly as she made the decision to activate the Revelation Protocol. There was no selfish ambition, no species chauvinism, just a desperate hope that understanding could replace fear before it was too late. As the visions faded and individual consciousness returned, Admiral Zetka found himself staring at displays that showed the same thing every other commander in the fleet was seeing. Sensor readings from the galactic edge that confirmed the Devourer's approach. The entities were already inside the galaxy. All ships, he transmitted on open channels, his voice heavy with the weight of new understanding. Stand down from attack positions. The humans were telling the truth. We have a greater enemy approaching. Across the assembled fleets, similar orders were being given as commanders grappled with the revelations they had experienced. The Valish ships began shifting to defensive configurations, their hulls flowing into new shapes optimized for protection rather than assault. The Gornak vessels powered down their planet killers and activated long-range sensors instead. Even the merchant vessels began organizing into supply chains rather than evacuation fleets. In the Nexus Station's core chamber, Sarah collapsed into a chair as the psychic link finally severed. The experience of being connected to millions of minds simultaneously had been overwhelming, even for a human brain that the architects had apparently optimized for such contact. "Are you all right?" Dr. Tanaka asked, his own face pale from the experience. "I think so," Sarah replied weakly. "Did it work? Are they convinced?" The AI answered before Dr. Tanaka could respond. "Initial results are encouraging. Fleet commanders are standing down from attack positions and beginning coordination protocols for mutual defense. However, the psychic link has had varying effects on different species." The chamber's displays showed status reports from across the galaxy. Most beings had survived the experience intact, but there were troubling exceptions. Some members of highly telepathic species had been driven mad by the sudden connection to so many alien minds. Others seemed to be stuck in a permanent state of expanded consciousness, unable to return to their normal individual awareness. The architects warned this might happen, Dr. Tanaka said, reading from the final protocol files. They calculated that approximately 3% of the galactic population would be adversely affected by the Revelation Protocol. Sarah felt sick. 3% of the galaxy's population meant billions of beings whose minds she had potentially destroyed with her decision. But as the displays showed the approaching devourer forces, she knew the alternative would have been infinitely worse. The sensor readings were terrifying. Where normal space should have been at the galaxy's edge, there was instead a growing region of absolute nothingness. Stars were simply vanishing, not exploding or burning out, but disappearing as if they had never existed. And at the border of this expanding void, massive shapes moved with purpose and malevolent intelligence. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked. Based on their current rate of advance, the AI calculated, the Devourers will reach the first inhabited systems in approximately 48 hours. Admiral Zekka's image appeared in the chamber as he requested communication with the station's command center. His chitinous features showed an expression Sarah had never seen from a Keth before. Genuine humility. "Captain Shun," he said, "I owe you an apology. My pride and suspicion nearly doomed us all. The Keth Empire places itself at your disposal for the coming battle. Admiral, with respect, this isn't about human command of galactic forces. The architects designed this crisis to require cooperation between all species. We each have roles to play." Similar communications were coming in from across the galaxy as species leaders grappled with the new reality. The Zephyrian Conclave offered to use their time manipulation abilities to slow the Devourer's advance. The Valish Confederacy proposed using their reality-shaping technology to create barriers. The Gornak Brotherhood volunteered their warriors for the inevitable ground battles. But it was Dr. Tanaka who identified the real scope of what they faced. "Sarah, look at these tactical analyses the AI is generating. The Devourers aren't just physically destroying our galaxy. They're using some kind of entropy weapon that's increasing the rate of universal decay in the regions they occupy." The displays showed complex mathematical projections that hurt to look at directly. The Devourer's presence was accelerating the natural processes that would eventually lead to the heat death of the universe. If they weren't stopped, not only would this galaxy be consumed, but the fundamental structure of reality itself would be damaged. The architects faced the same threat in their home galaxy, the AI explained. Their final transmission, sent moments before their own extinction, contained the complete specifications for a weapon system designed to exploit the Devourer's only weakness. "What weakness?" Sarah asked. "The Devourers exist partially outside normal space-time, which makes them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. However, their connection to our reality requires stable quantum resonance patterns. If those patterns can be disrupted on a galactic scale, the entities will be forced back into whatever dimension they originated from. Dr. Tanaka was already working to access the weapon specifications. How do we disrupt quantum resonance patterns across an entire galaxy? The weapon requires synchronized activation from multiple points throughout galactic space, the AI replied. Specifically, it needs resonance generators placed at the gravitational center of every major star system, all activating simultaneously with precise timing measured in nanoseconds. Sarah felt her heart sink as she realized the scope of what was required. That's impossible. There are millions of inhabited systems in the galaxy. Even if we could build enough resonance generators, we could never coordinate their activation precisely enough. Actually, we can, the AI said. The Nexus station was designed to serve as the coordination center for exactly this kind of operation. Its quantum communication arrays can maintain synchronized contact with devices throughout the galaxy, regardless of distance or relativistic effects. But we need to build and deploy millions of these resonance generators in less than 48 hours, Dr. Tanaka protested. Even with every shipyard in the galaxy working at maximum capacity, it's not possible. The AI's response surprised them both. The generators do not need to be built. They already exist. New displays showed detailed scans of the Nexus station itself, revealing hidden structures deep within its core that Sarah had never suspected existed. The station wasn't just a diplomatic hub and communication center. It was the master control unit for a weapon system that spanned the entire galaxy. Every major space station, orbital facility, and planetary defense grid built using architect technology contains a dormant resonance generator, the AI explained. The architect spent millions of years seeding these devices throughout the galaxy, disguised as harmless infrastructure components. Sarah stared at the displays in amazement. You mean every time a species built a space dock or communication relay using architect designs, they were actually installing parts of a galaxy-spanning weapon system? Correct. The Devourer's previous attacks always failed because civilizations turned against each other before the weapon could be activated. The architects calculated that only a species capable of uniting all others could successfully coordinate the system. Admiral Zetka's voice cut through their amazement. Captain Shun, our sensors are detecting changes in the Devourer's advance pattern. They appear to be accelerating. The tactical displays confirmed the Admiral's report. The void at the galaxy's edge was expanding faster, consuming star systems at an increasing rate. Worse, the Devourers seemed to be specifically targeting systems with high populations, as if they could sense where the greatest concentrations of life energy waited to be consumed. They know we're preparing to resist, Dr. Tanaka realized. Somehow they can detect the activation of the weapon system. The architects anticipated this, the AI said. The weapon requires a specific activation sequence that will take exactly 37 hours to complete. Once initiated, the process cannot be stopped or reversed. If we begin the countdown and fail to complete it successfully, the resonance generators will overload and destroy themselves, leaving us defenseless. Sarah understood the terrible choice they faced. If they activated the weapon system too early, the Devourers might be able to disrupt it before completion. If they waited too long, there wouldn't be enough time to finish the sequence before their forces were overwhelmed. And underlying everything was the fact that even if the weapon worked perfectly, it had never been tested. The architects had built it based on theoretical calculations about entities that defied conventional physics. There was no guarantee it would actually force the Devourers back to their own dimension. AI, what are the odds of success if we activate the weapon system now? Based on current parameters, I calculate a 67% probability of successful activation, with a 43% chance that the weapon will effectively repel the Devourers. Sarah looked at Dr. Tanaka, seeing her own thoughts reflected in his expression. The odds were terrible, but they were the only chance they had. Begin the activation sequence, she ordered. Across the galaxy, dormant systems that had waited millions of years for this moment began to awaken. In the deepest levels of space stations, beneath the foundations of planetary defense grids, and within the cores of communication relays, architect technology stirred to life. The resonance generators started their slow charge cycles, drawing energy from stellar cores and quantum fluctuations to build the massive power reserves they would need. The process was subtle enough that most beings wouldn't notice anything unusual, but sensitive instruments detected the changes immediately. And 37 light-years away, at the galactic edge, ancient sensors noticed the activation signatures and began calculating countermeasures. The Devourers had faced this weapon before in other galaxies, and they knew exactly how to stop it. The race against extinction had begun.